James for the third time.
Yeah,
Today we're going to talk
the
about
Triple Crown. Yeah,
Triple Crown. We're going to talk about some cool books. Okay, so we just started talking for recorded. So you have a book from 1697
right.
that is written by a woman and how women can defend themselves from the terrible things that men do to them.
Precisely. Yeah. And it also compares women with the general trends in philosophy at the time. The author, read John Locke and things like that, and he sort of suggests, and doesn't prove it, but suggests that women are totally capable of doing anything that men are capable of doing, which is really a breakthrough for 1697. Um, Here's a nice label on there. And say it's a
Okay.
female sex, and it has a
Was
beautiful.
she tried as a witch for writing this?
No, no, but she didn't put her name in there. So you can see the frontispiece. Here's a man getting all duded up for a date, and the moral is that the vanity is started by the barber and ended by the barber surgeon. So it's really a neat book, and it's um, I think one of the cornerstones of early modern feminism, which is just so neat. Um, as I said, the author didn't put her name in. It says down here, written by a lady, and the lady for a long time was thought to be Mary Astle, but after modern analysis and also figuring out um, who wrote the dedication and the preface, they came up with Judith Drake.
Judith Drake. Okay.
Yeah.
Did she write anything else noteworthy during that time
Um,
period?
n- not that not that she's given credit for. Uh,
Okay. Not that she,
yeah.
okay.
And while she wasn't burned as a witch, I'm sure that this created lots and lots of controversy.
Oh,
Uh,
I'm pretty sure 1690 97, and it's
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
and it's way out there. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that was a nice thing. I blogged about it about a week ago, and hopefully it will sell soon. Uh,
Yeah. So quickly, you said barber and barber surgeon. I know barbers as early as the Middle Ages were the guys that cut the bald spot on
right.
monks' heads, and then they would cut off infected limbs. But what were they at that point in that time
Um,
period?
at that point, they were more like barbers are now, who were, helping um, make wigs for you, put wigs on you. Um, Men wore makeup, as you can see in there, makeup, and it's very different, but they were still also doing a lot of the physicians' jobs, and while there were surgeons and physicians and doctors, there was also the barber, and the barber was just closing the circle of the beginning of vanity and the end of getting your nose cut off or whatever because you probably had syphilis or something like that.
Okay.
So it's really a sort of satirical and just moralistic, frontispiece, which generally is what they tried to do in a frontispiece at that period.
Okay.
Um,
Did
so
yeah, was there like self-defense tips?
no, it's more like characters. So chapter one is the character of a pedant. Chapter two is the country squire. Chapter three is a bully, and and then like the next chapter is the beau. So all of these traits that guys represent, and how vain and weak it is. And in once you get into it, she sort of um, talks about how um, women should be educated, which I find really interesting. And it says like at the age of 6 or 7 years, begin to be separated from the boys and are sent to grammar school, and the girls to boarding school or other places to learn needlework, dancing, singing, music, drawing, painting, and other accomplishments according to the humor and ability of the parents and the inclination of the child. Isn't it great? So this page, and so so it's instruction for how to be a woman. It gives you a real great look in a snapshot of what it looked like for women at the time. I've just opened up to a page, and it says this deceit is so far from being the vice of our sex that they are common object on to which it is daily practice. I guess this is about uh the being a woman being in court, being flattered, and becoming a spectator, uh and not as an actor but as an ornament, not as an instrument, but therefore they're seldom involved in the guilty practices of it. So she really gets deep into the place of woman, and it has a nice table of contents in the back, and let's see how bodies are organized. The brutes of both sexes are of equal sense. So she says that because a female horse and a male horse can smell the same sort of things or do the same sort of things, so can humans, which is really a breakthrough.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah. Yeah, and then she, in the back, the vulgar of both sexes. So she talks about, vulgar men and vulgar women. Women are bred too much to the ignorance of business. Women are bred too much for the ignorance of industriosity and kept in ignorance. Um, why constant lovers why are constant lovers true friends than men, and not generally so vicious as men. That's nice to know. Women aren't as vicious as men.
Not as vicious. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, yeah. So this is one of the new ones. I just grabbed a handful of books. um let's see, this one has my favorite title of any English book of the time. As you can see, it's a restitution of decayed intelligence. And
I can only imagine what that book might mean.
yeah, so there's the front, and as you can see, there's the Tower of Babel,
Hmm.
and basically this concerns um, the history of the English nation and how um, the Romans messed it up, and he goes through and makes a sort of a counter history based more on Anglo-Saxon things than um, the Roman gods. And in it, he gives a little description of all the Roman gods, and I mean of the Anglo-Saxon gods, and how he uses their names. Um, like this is the sun, and that's why we have Sunday, and so on. And so these are all every day of the week has an Anglo-Saxon god that they search the name. He finds the Anglo-Saxon root for, and it matches our days. And he once he's done with the basic history, here's the arrival of the first ancestors from Germany to Britain, bringing the Saxon part, as you can see. And then he delves really deeply into the language and the tongue. And as you can see here, the letters that are dark are the Anglo-Saxon words, and he gives descriptions of them. And one of there's a bunch of really cool things in here. He talks about um, the Pied Piper, um, and he talks about the fossils, and this is one of the first English books with fossils in it. There you go. And this proves that um, during the flood, England was there, and that the animals got caught up in the flood and died on the island of um, Great Britain, and therefore they're as old as Noah, which is sort of cool. And when he's going through the words, one of the words that I found really interesting was werewolf. And he has a long description of werewolf in here, including an example of people that had seen werewolves.
Okay. So
Yeah,
so would this be like the typical turning at the full moon werewolf, or would this
yeah, that kind of werewolf. Yep.
okay. So this is kind of like just a giant grocery list of animals.
No, it's just words that begin with W. But as you can see up here it says the werewolf. Can you see that? Is that
Oh,
um and the werewolves are certain sorcerers who, having anointed their bodies with the ointments they make by the instinct of the devil, and putting certain enchanted girdles on, uh, do not only unto others' view they seem as wolves, but in their own thing have both the shape and nature of wolves, so long as they wear this girdle. And he goes on to say, and gives the name of some people in parts of Germany who have seen werewolves, and having killed 13 children and two women and one man. Um, uh, and this guy named Cullen saw them do this in the year 1589. So it's a true account of werewolves. So I think we can like just assume that they exist and be really careful when you're out there.
all right. If you bring that a little closer to the camera.
Sure. Let's see. So the second chapter is the second paragraph is the description.
That is incredible.
Yeah, that's a great book. So he goes through and describes like all kinds of words, and it's just like one of those books that I pick them up and I just can't put it down without reading it, not cover to cover, but instead of just opening up a page and reading it until I get sort of bewildered by it, and then I go to another section. And it's let's see, it is very scholarly and very reliable, but at the same time, pretty out there. One of the things, the author was a Catholic, and wrote this while he was in Holland because Catholics weren't too thought of in that Anglican period. This one's from 1628. It's the second edition, and it was printed in England. The first edition was 1605 and printed in Amsterdam. Um, the woodcuts in here were drawn by the author, and then these are engravings, were drawn by the author in the manuscript, and then turned into engravings. And for some reason or another, the engravings didn't make it with the manuscript to England, and they had to recut them. So I think that these are sort of nicer than the original 1605 edition. And who's that? Oh, Thor. And I guess Thor is probably for Thursday.
Okay. I didn't know that Thor was an Anglican god.
Yeah. I mean, I think he was Anglo-Saxon. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. He said,
Anglo-Saxons had him. Anglo-Saxons had him too.
oh, well, they say that the Danes and the Swedes do uh do still call it Thor Day. In the Netherlands, it is called Dunderdag, um, which being written according to our English orthography is Thunder Day. So, and that makes sense. So he's really an amazing author. He makes all this stuff up and then transforms it into or and collects and transforms facts to fit it, which is really great and very early 17th century stuff.
Okay, so back then they were just making up a bunch of stuff, or
Well, I mean,
to them it seemed
on
like it was research.
well, I think that everybody works with what they have,
Mhm.
and so what happens is as we find more quote unquote evidence or facts, we have to change our worldviews to fit it. Which brings me to another wonderful book.
Mhm.
See if I can.
Because the thing with Thor,
Uh-huh.
what made me, what came to my mind is the potential of him using this as an opportunity to maybe even be a little more slamming on another country that he might not like.
Oh, yeah, he definitely wants there to be an Anglo-Saxon culture instead of, like uh, a Romanized or romantic language sort of country, and he makes a big break with like the Anglo-Saxon words are very different than the Latinate words that we get, and making a whole history around that, and in a more unique British um, uh, foundational or creation myth almost, as opposed to just borrowing um, the Europeans. So the French and Germans, as opposed to the northern countries.
Yeah. Was this a normal book at like, was it normal to be writing books like this at the time?
Um, yeah, there was a lot of people writing histories at the time, and most of them were uh, based on Roman models. And they there's a lot of repeating, but there's also sort of showing this thing uh, that Britain was a brute place, and then the Romans came and turned it into like a modern country, and Verstegen, the author of this, keeps like fighting against that. But I think that it's there's a tendency for people to look back on a history like this and not see the incredible breakthroughs that he's making um, as far as linguistic analysis of myths and things like that, as opposed to just copying the the um, notion of history that came before. And the linguistic breakthroughs that he makes, most of them are correct, but some of them, like the werewolf, um, sort of interpret um, myth or unfactual things as facts. And that uh, brings me to one of my very favorite books and another wonderful title, Pseudodoxia Epidemica. And as you can see, an inquiry into uh, received tenets and commonly presumed truths. So what his mission was, which fits in perfectly with the two earlier books, is tries to think of things that people believe that are not true and lists them all. And as you can see, it's a pretty big book. And he he just goes through and of the second cause of popular errors and erroneous descriptions of people. So he tries to be very scientific and structured in his analysis of why people get so many things wrong. And he talks about um, natural history things like of the bear. Here's a section on the bear, and that a bear brings forth their young um, in forms and unshapen, which she fashioned after by licking all over. It is only the opinion of the vulgar and common that this is present with. It has um, old derived by the ancient writers. So upon this foundation is a hieroglyphic in the Egyptians. Aristotle seems in continence with Solinus and Pliny alien. And so now he goes through all the authors who perpetuated this myth that the lion came, I mean, the bear came out unshaped and the mother bear licks it into shape of a bear. Very interesting stuff. About sneezing, so he talks about sneezing. He talks about why people would believe that Jews have horns, and which is pretty interesting. That's like it's one of those typographical translation sort of myths. And oh, so this is like saying that Jews smell differently, and it's because they eat different vegetables and different plants and different animals than we do. And but somewhere in here he talks about the tribes and how there was a depiction of Moses, um, and that it looked like he had horns, and somebody wrote that he had horns, even though there was just something behind his head, and then it just kept getting repeated. So,
Full
yeah.
circle back to our first interview.
Hmm?
I said full circle back to our first interview.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And let's see, right and left-handedness, ring fingers, the heart. Let's see, something, the animals, of the salamander, of the ostrich. So it's sort of a natural history book, but at the same time, he's correcting all the misconceptions about them, which is great. I mean, and
What
he
is your
gives the
personal, what's your personal favorite in that whole book?
um, I think one of them is the beaver, um, because the beaver um uh, is if a beaver is being um hunted, it will chew off his testicles and leave them behind, so his scent will stay there. Yeah, the castor. Yeah. So that was like that really shook me. It's like, oh, I've never heard that one before.
First time for everything.
Yeah, yeah. So there's you know, the description of the ostrich is pretty good, about why it puts its head in the sand. Um, here we go. Again, if these were true, that the beaver in Chase makes some delusion of parts, as seen in what we call the castorum, are not the same to be termed as the testes or stones, for these cods and follies are found in both sexes. So, um, yeah, so I don't know what he's saying, but he's saying they don't chew their stones off, but they have other things, cuds and follicles. So they probably emit an oil. which he goes on to say, there is here to uh, no derivation of the female parts, nor the passage hence onto the vessels of ejaculation. Some preformations only in the part of itself through which the humor, including doth exudate, as to be observed in such a fresh and not so dried age. So there's the question you can ask your friend, do beavers like chew off their stones? Or what is that stuff that comes out of them? I have a beaver in my brook, and when I walk across the bridge, it will swim up, turn around, and slap the water and try to splash me. It's but yeah, I've never seen it do anything else besides that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No, I have a. Actually, I'm curious. Is there anything on a porcupine in there? I've got one
oh
living in my backyard right now.
yeah, they eat the
I
oh,
call them.
here's one that I forgot about, the mandrake. Uh, the mandrake, uh, you have to get dogs to dig it up because if a man digs it up, it screams so loud you'll go deaf.
Ooh, what's on unicorns?
Let's see, that's chapter 23.
Do they emit rainbows from their eyes or something?
Now that'd be good.
They leave glitter everywhere they go.
Yeah, glitter. Great account is made of the unicorn's horn, at least that which beareth the name thereof, wherein notwithstanding many perceive or suspect to be an impostor, some conceive there is no such animal extant. Herein, and therefore to draw up a determination, besides several places in scriptures mentions the animal, which some may well continue only to mean the rhinoceros. Um, let's see. Some doubt it. The unicorn, described by various authors, is a one-horned goat. Um, they never came to England, and that he's pretty convinced that they're hippopot, uh, hippopotamuses with one horn. Hmm.
Hippopotamus with one horn? That's what a unicorn is?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
A hippo with one horn.
Oh, yeah. This is about toads and frogs, which there's quite a bit on. I can imagine. Oh yes, about the toad. When you pick it up, it pisses on you, uh, and diffuses the venom, which is generally received not only to us, but also to other parts. For it hath Scaliger observed in his comment. Um, he has also a passage on how toads communicate with venom, and not only by urine, but by the humidity and flavor of its mouth, and notwithstanding strictly understood, and I must admit, before examination. So there we go. Um, this is just like a catalog of the things that, it's almost like reading the Weekly World News or something. It's like, um, just I can't believe people believe these things, but there you go. And we do live in like such a miraculous world.
Yeah, no, it's interesting how much we've changed in 400 years.
A great one. This is really great. This is a theater of God's judgment, and wherein is represented the admirable justice of God. So this is a collection of bad things that have happened to people and why God punished them that way. If you're a blasphemer, as touching blaspheme, it is the most grievous and enormous sin. And contrary to the third commandment, when a man is so wretched and so miserable as to pronounce uh, presupposition speeches against God. And then he'll give examples of, you know, people who cursed God and what happened to them. Um, and the admirable discovery of murderers. And these are people that killed bad people and why they're good. And God let them kill bad people. Um, in this book is one of the earliest descriptions of Christopher Marlowe being killed, and how, and lots of, like, you know, um, people say he was mugged in an alley, but basically he just disappeared, and there's all these myths about him. But this is a near contemporary. The Christopher Marlowe, the book came out in 1598, and Christopher Marlowe was killed a couple years before that. So it's pretty close to the time it happened. So a lot of times that makes it seem more likely to be closer to the truth than not, as opposed to the wife of Constantine and how she was killed. I could just go on and on about this. But these four books, while all very different in subject, have the same spirit in them, that they're trying to fix wrong things, which I guess is, I guess I find that um, like a very fertile ground for exploration at any time. You know, yeah, something like global warming, you know, or so, it's there, it's obvious right now, but people want to deny it, and just like people wanting to deny that the beaver doesn't chew off its stones.
Maybe that should be like a new conspiracy theory you and I could start. Beavers chew off their stones.
Yeah, I'm sure we have a bibliography for it. He lists everybody that says that, so we could refer to Aristotle says so, you know.
Starts with Aristotle. The
Yeah,
ancient Greeks knew it.
yeah, they knew what was going to happen. So
Man, that is funny. That's funny. Do you have any more books, James, that you want to share?
um let's see. uh this is another, oh, okay, this is a big one. Let's see.
Ooh, it's got to be like what, 1,000 pages at least?
Yeah, well, so it's the thesaurus of Latin to English. And this is 1584. So this is probably the kind of dictionary that Shakespeare would have used. And it gives beautiful uh, descriptions of Latin phrases. So do, das, dida, datum, dare, to give, to grant, to offer, to prosper, and to profess. And if you just look through it, there's all these great, to exempt from a charge, to run or set violently upon the truth. So imperium, dare imperium. So this is like also another handy book for me when I'm looking up that Latin word that I don't remember. And at the same time, it informs us about what was common phrases. She is also told for 120 pounds. Oh, she is also sold for 120 pounds. So I don't know what that must mean, but it's something very expensive. Um, and to take to take what is offered or granted, and to admit the pan see I don't know, can't read that one. The letters are too messed up. But anyway, so this dictionary is just wonderful. It's like what everyone expects of an old book. and it weighs a ton. So
Kept
I
those
think,
forms in shape back then.
yeah, yeah.
Quickly going back to that previous book, what is your favorite, uh, I guess, excuse God gave a good person to murder somebody who's bad?
Oh, I think, oh, divorce. Yeah, divorce was one of them that people wanted to get divorced. That's against God's rule. It's like, don't divorce me, I'm just going to kill you. And is sort of sucking up to Henry VIII in a little bit. you know
It's actually funny. I just sent someone a meme not that long ago who's getting married.
hmm
It looks very, whoever photoshopped it did a good job, but it said Making Marriage Work by Henry VIII.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So how do they suck up to Henry VIII?
Well, I mean, they're saying that it's okay to kill somebody if they're going to divorce you. 'Cause that's what God would want. So, that would sort of make Henry VIII feel justified.
Okay. Are there other historical figures that are mentioned in that?
Um, well, there's a lot of, I mean, yeah. So the 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 greater part of this book is of tales from classical literature. So, um, I just opened up, and here's Queen Mary in 1555. Um, let's see. The contemptuous and irreverent handling of the word of God in the pulpit, together with the open hatred of the gospel, was most famously revenged in one single night. Um, the parson of Donegal, besides Canterbury, in the reign of Queen Mary Anno 1555, the parson, let's see, how'd they get rid of him? Hmm. Wow, taking his time getting there. Um, front stone at the point of popes. Oh, so the Pope wrote a pardon for this guy, and he thanked God that ever he lived to see that day, and adding more ever that he believed that by virtue of that bull he was clean from his sin. Um, uh, and I'm betting that he wasn't. So anyway, it's sort of like a collection of old newspapers that he's read through, and so he's attacked by the Holy Ghost, which I don't know what that means, but um, then he describes what Socrates says about ghosts, and just goes all over. It's just wonderful, uh, early modern, bouncing from one subject to the next, which, um, even though they wrote these great big books, they had short attention spans in their own way.
So I would have thought that back then people would have had a longer attention span because
Well, yeah, I think they, you know, had more time, but at the same time, they were trying to connect everything up. So in pretty much all of these books too, they rely on canon sources. So, you know, it's all based in Latin literature, and making Latin literature in um, accessible to English readers, and how to insert that, as the English language became more prominent, they needed more excuses to have their ideas and see how their ideas fit with previous historians like Pliny or those those who rebel against their superiors. This is probably an interesting chapter. And so most of these now are referring to parts of the Bible and examples from the Bible and how people were punished by rising above their status, which was also very important in British culture at that time. Yeah, and so this one he's talking about the late sovereign Queen Elizabeth. So it's and let's see, oh, and then he lists all the people who were rising above their superiors. So the Earls of Northumberland, the Earls of Westminster, and so on, um, during her reign were challenging her, and bad things happened to them. So,
All right.
so I don't want to end on a bad thing, but at the same time, it's like, uh,
Yeah, but no, it's an interesting thing though. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again, James.
sure,
Been
sure,
good. Let's
yeah,
try and get you on more this summer.